Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live, and it's our first Sales Intelligent webinar of the year. Remember, the third Wednesday of each month at 4:05, we're going to be bringing people who understands the craft of sales. And we know that selling is a craft that can be learned. But we need to understand, too, that selling, it's a science that incorporate other topics in another which says craft too. We need data, we need behavior, we need to learn to read ourselves, we need to read our customer, and we need to learn to networking. One of the things that I don't like, and I always confess, is networking. I always says I'm doing it wrong all the way out. But there's people out there who not only can help you to better navigate networking, actually do it right. How many of you have LinkedIn requests and suddenly the next thing is a bombardment of like, I have this product, I can fix your problem. Like, wait a minute, dude, you don't know if I have a problem. Why are you trying to sell me something without knowing what I need? Why are you trying to shop me a product that you don't know if we use it, if we're not agree with the one we have, even if we need it? So prospecting and networking, it's a science that, again, I'm horrible at it. I always says I have two specialties. I forget your name, and I'm horrible in first impressions. And Dave Burlin, it's someone who have mastered the craft of networking. Dave, why networking?
Yeah, for me, Susan, and thanks so much for making time for today. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. For me, I get really frustrated every time I go to a networking event and I get stabbed with business cards and people try to sell me something. And, the whole idea of networking and the purpose of that to me is building relationships. And I feel like a lot of people get that confused and they'll start to sell on a product because they have the right intentions. They're going to these events to grow their influence and grow their business. But sometimes I feel like people just do it the wrong way. And it breaks my heart every time I hear about people who are waiting on the sidelines for permission to, somebody to approve them to say, hey, you're good enough to work here. You're good enough for this position. Where a lot of times if they build the right network and they invest in the right relationships, those opportunities will open up. So for me, it's really just about offering a few ideas to approach networking a little bit differently.
Sometimes I feel it's like a mid-market and I'm exposed and like, okay, who's coming? How they coming? Where are they coming? And it like, I don't want to be here. I want to go home. And I tend to go always to networking with friends because I don't know how to manage. And I'm not considering myself a person that doesn't know how to manage relationship. But sometimes people is so aggressive that seriously, I'm thinking like, again, I want to live. I want to get to another place and I don't want to be exposed. And they come into you like Dracula coming from the jugular.
Yeah. And that's one of those things where a lot of people are taught that it's a numbers game. And it is, but there's really two different games that people are playing. And sometimes I think they fall into playing the same game. And that's that of prospecting. And there's just a lot of challenges that come with that. So been working on this topic for a couple of years now. And I've come up with a few really fun ideas to offer, a different perspective on it.
And let's say that Dave was such a doll that he put a presentation to visualize, because I always says 85% of what you listen and see, it can be retained. When you only talk, 10% can be retained. And there's so many caveats that you have in your presentation that we review today that actually like it makes so much sense. But first of all, Dave, where are you coming from, who you are, and we know that you're specialized in networking. You're in Vegas having fun. Good for you. A better weather than we have here. We both go back to the 30s this weekend in Midwest. So enjoy the weather as long as you can. And tell us about you.
Yeah. So I'm a Marine Corps veteran and I am out here in Las Vegas. I'm originally from Tulsa, a little town outside of Tulsa. But the last couple of years before I moved to Vegas, I was in Tulsa, and I've I've really had a lot of fun with a few different roles and titles in the last 20 years. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2003. I became a drill instructor for at-risk youth. I was basically working with high school dropouts for 7 years. And then I got into the world of DJing weddings. And the fascinating thing about DJing weddings was it taught me a whole world of business and entrepreneurship. And slowly I started to grow a business that was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I opened up an office in Dallas, one in Kansas City. We expanded that into Denver, Indianapolis. And I really have just become fascinated with growth, development. And somewhere along the way, speaking was something that I really found as a lot of fun for me and a great way to express big ideas. I did my first public talk was a TEDx talk, and I talked about veteran transition. And then slowly over time, that conversation has evolved into my perspective, how I see organizations, building relationships, business. I still do a lot of work with veterans. I'm the volunteer city leader for a program called Bunker Labs, and we help veterans and their spouses start and grow businesses. So it's a national program. I'm one of the city leaders here in Vegas. And to fund that passion, it's a volunteer role. I'm a speaker, consultant, and for the last 3 years, I've really been digging deep on this concept of why networking to find out, what is building relationships really about? How do we do that more authentically without stabbing people with the business card?
Let me know when you're ready. We have the presentation on the backdrop. Are we ready?
I'm all good. Yeah, we can fire it up.
Okay. So awesome. Like Dave present himself, and I'm going to let you know that at the end of the presentation, we're going to start taking questions. But I think the presentation is so well versed that I don't know if it's not going to be too many questions, because it's an ABC. You need to have it because it's simple to have. So Dave, all yours. I will now going to interrupt you. I want to wait until the end to make my own questions too.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah. So really been working on this topic for quite some time, and I've got it sharpened down to, about 10 or 15 minutes. So if anybody does have any questions, feel free to plug them into the chat and we'll circle back to those. But really the idea that I want to share today is just that. It's really just an idea of how we can approach relationships differently. But before we get into how to do that, hence the name, why networking, why are relationships important? For everybody that may be here watching, there's probably a reason why relationships might be important to you, either in life or in business. And as I've really spent a long time working on this conversation and interviewing people and trying to understand what people love about networking, what people are frustrated with, one thing that I learned is it's definitely a big conversation. And when I say it's a big conversation, I'm not trying to force these ideas upon anybody. I just want to introduce simply a different way. And I'm always intrigued to follow in the footsteps of people who have inspired me. And there's one thing that I know is that there's a lot of people that have inspired me to get where I'm at. And I'm sure for anybody who's listening and watching today, there's probably somebody who's really had a strong impact in your life. And if you just take a second to think about who that person might be, and while I can't see anybody's video, and one thing that I challenge you to do, if you trust me, is to really close your eyes and think about one person who may have had an impact on your life. Somebody who introduced you to the love of your life, or somebody who introduced you to an opportunity that changed everything for you. I think we all have that one person. And sometimes we don't realize that if we work really hard to serve other people, sometimes we can be that person for somebody else. And I always love starting every presentation with this quote. And I'm not saying that I'm going to change the world, but I certainly will spark the mind that does. And that's from Tupac. And what's interesting is that while his music had an influence on an entire generation, he didn't have that direct of an influence on very many people in his short life. But if we focus on how we serve other people, then a lot of times we can be the character in somebody else's story that introduces them to the next opportunity, or we can be that influence for them. So if that's why we're building relationships, for me, I believe one relationship, one introduction can truly change everything. And I believe that so much, but a lot of times it gets taken out of context when you meet somebody and the first thing they try to do is sell you. So you've probably been to a networking event. You've probably been to an event in the past where you show up, you bring your business cards, and as soon as you start meeting and greeting people, as soon as you meet the first person that you don't know, they ask you, hey, what do you do? And here's the funniest part. If you've ever been frustrated, if you've ever had a hard time with it, and ladies, I apologize for one common thread that I get from most ladies when I ask them what they like or don't like about networking. One thing that they say is guys just see it as open season to hit on me, married or not. And that definitely happens. And I'm very sorry that happens for a lot of people. But here's what I've learned. If you've ever had that uncomfortable feeling where I feel like this person is just trying to sell me, I've done a lot of work and I've figured out why that happens. And it's because we ask one question that gives them permission to do it. And it's, what do you do? As soon as you start to ask that question, what do you do? Most people that go with the intention to build relationships immediately go into pitch mode because you've just asked, what do you do? And now the only way that they know how to explain what they do is in their calculated, formulated pitch. Most people know that in a networking scenario, they should be building more relationships first. So they might have a few questions, but slowly those questions turn into, oh, I think this might be a potential sales prospect. And they naturally fall into a prospecting mode. So one of my favorite things to ask people is, what questions do you ask to learn about somebody? What are some of the favorite questions that you've had? And I have all kinds of great questions. My favorite question is, what are you excited about? Right? And it could be about life or business, but we don't know where it's going to go. What books are you reading? Tell me about how you got this role. Tell me about your family. There's all kinds of other questions that you can ask, but unfortunately, a lot of people, when they say, what do you do? It immediately starts to go into that more of that pitch mode. So when I've done this poll, I've tried to find out where this happens. So I'll ask people in a room full of 100 people, by show of hands, how many people came here to introduce their business or their service to more people? And like 80% of the hands go up. And I say, how many people just came to build new relationships? And people are like, dang it, he got us. And the other 20% go up, and the 80%, those hands go a little bit higher. So now we have all the hands up, but then I say, how many people came here to be sold by somebody else? And all the hands go down. See, we're coming to build relationships. We're coming to introduce ideas, but we're not coming to be sold. So that's where the uncomfortable things happen. As soon as you start to say, hey, what do? You start to give them permission to go into that sales cycle. So there's 3 really powerful questions that one of the most influential people in my life introduced to me. And we spoke at a conference together, and his name is Mike Kim. And I'd love to share those questions with you. And not only are these really good questions to know and understand who people really are, but if you are in business, these are great questions that you can ask and answer all the time that will help the right people gravitate to you. And these 3 questions are, number 1, what pisses you off? What breaks your heart? And what problem are you trying to solve? And that's one of my favorite people on the planet, Mike Kim. He's a great coach, a great mentor, and he's really good at helping people isolate their personal brand. But these are the things that drive us as people. These are the things that we're always striving. And if you noticed, whenever we first started talking, I said, you know what pisses me off? Every time I go to a networking event, somebody stabs me with a business card. And it breaks my heart watching people wait for permission when it's people in their network that could have unlocked those opportunities for them. And the problem that I'm trying to solve is to simply teach people that there's a better way. And what I found is that the definition of prospecting and networking is the difference where people start to get it wrong. See, because people go to these events with the intention to build their business, And the one thing is there's like 475 ways that you can build your business. But most people often associate that with sales. And as soon as you start to go into the sales process, you're now prospecting, and you're not wrong. But remember, people don't go to these events to be sold to. Save the prospecting for the trade shows. Save the prospecting for the cold calls or the warm leads or the referrals. But if people are going to truly build relationships, they're going to network. And it's so funny that it took me so long, and I've been exploring this conversation for 3 years, and I can be really honest with you. It's been in the last 3 months that I finally found the answer. And the answer is simply in the definition. The definition of networking versus prospecting is so very, very different, right? Networking, well, let's start with prospecting. The definition of prospecting is to introduce your product or service to a potential client with the sole purpose to move them through the sales cycle and convert them into paying customers or clients. That's the definition of prospecting. And every prospecting cycle has a really cool sales cycle, whether it be rapport, needs, benefits, close, presentation, objections, any of those things. There's a process, and there's these canned responses that we have that are trying to move those people through the sales cycle. And there is a numbers game to it, because for every 100 people you talk to, 10 people might be interested, 5 people might set an appointment, and 2 people might book. But it's a numbers game in the sales side. The difference in the definition of networking is that networking is about introducing ideas and information to people or groups with the purpose of building positive relationships in life and business. It has nothing to do with the sales cycle, yet people steer to what's comfortable for them. So what I've tried to do is simply create a cycle for opening and unlocking opportunities. Create a cycle that sits right next to your sales cycle, but is specifically for networking and building more authentic relationships. Because I believe networking is not about getting the next invoice. It's about unlocking infinite opportunities in every person you meet. And going back to those numbers game, if you look at for every 100 people you talk to, 10 people are going to be interested, 5 people might set an appointment, 2 people might book. You've successfully closed 2 people, and you may have closed the other 98 relationships before they've even given you any opportunities for you to explore. So my idea is that what if we create a cycle that is driven on principles? And this might freak some people out, but if I'm talking to somebody new for the first time, I cannot close them for business, regardless of how much they wave their hands. Now, they can go back to my website and they'll find a clear path of exactly how to work with me. But I set myself in the right intention to say, I will not try and close anything. The only thing that I'm going to do is unlock infinite opportunities in this new person that I'm meeting. And a lot of times people walk away and they'll feel a lot better about it. And then they'll say, hey, how do you do this? And it's 6 simple principles, right? Those principles are: number 1, show up. Number 2, share. Number 2 is serve. Number 3 is share. Number 4 is synergy. 5 is smile. And number 6 is shop local. And I'm going to unpack each one of those and go a little bit deeper. And the first step is to show up. And unknowingly, you've all done that. Just by showing up today, you've showed up with the opportunity to learn something, to connect with somebody new. And now, whether you realize it or not, whether you're coming to me through my network, you're now connected to somebody incredible like Susan. If you're coming through Susan's network, you're connected to people like me. And I'm the type of guy, if you come through Las Vegas, I'll pick you up at the airport, right? That's the level of intentional relationship building that I love to teach people. But it starts by showing up. And the great thing is you can show up virtually, you can show up in person, but the first step is to show up. The second is to serve. And when you look at the idea of serve, it's different for every person. Some people think service as the military. Some people think service as being a connector. Some people think about serving as offering their services for free to help people. whatever your superpower is and however you love to serve other people, really want you to set the intention to say, I'm going to this event, and no matter what, I'm going to use that superpower to help at least one other person. And here's the key: to expect nothing in return. To expect nothing in return. The third principle is to share. And this can be on social media posts. This can be on live events, anything that you know that is important that other people in your network might get value from. That share button doesn't cost a thing. If you're going to a virtual event, take a guest with you. If you're going to a live event, buy somebody else a ticket. When you share what other people are working on, you open yourself up to a whole nother network of people. And for anybody that's out there that's in the space of actually hosting any kind of event, live or virtual, man, it feels really good when somebody shows up that you have no idea who they are, who they got connected to, and somebody else has shared that information. And now you're being introduced to somebody completely different that you wouldn't have otherwise, right? That's a great way to build relationships with the people that put those events together. Other things that are really important are job postings, announcements, anything that somebody might get value out of. Remember, that introduction could change somebody's life. I live in Vegas now. I'm from Tulsa, and I've spent a lot of time where I'll share other people's job postings, and it falls on the right eyeballs. It might be a job posting back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'll share it, and somebody else will see that, and it will have connected an opportunity back to somebody in my network. So sharing is one of those simple rules of something that we learned in kindergarten. And I feel like the best things that we learned as humans, we learned in kindergarten. So just stick to what works and share other people's stuff. The fourth principle is synergy. And that's really to think long term, right? There's a lot of opportunities where you'll sit in front of somebody. And right now, today, the role that you have and the role that I have, there's absolutely nothing that we're going to be able to work on together. If we try to force it, it's just going to make it worse. But if we learn how to create synergy and think anything long-term, guess what? 2 years from now, you might not be passing out the same business card that you are today. In fact, most people don't pass out the same business card or don't have the title for more than 2 years, right? And this is normally where I poll the audience and say, how many people here have been in a role for less than 2 years? And like 80% of the hands go up. And that's just to show that you never know what might change. Quick little story just to really add the element of this. I hosted a live event for Why Networking, and I talked about these principles back in October of 2019. It was prior to the pandemic. We had food, beverages, all that stuff. I had about 50 people show up, and I was really proud. I hadn't even lived in the city for a year. And to get 50 people to show up to an event in Las Vegas, that's pretty hard to do. There's millions of things going on any given day of the week. And I reached out to a lot of the people that I had loosely connected with. And there was one gal, and I didn't spam her. I did polite invites. I never heard any response. Probably after 4 or 5 invites, she sent me a message and she said, "Hey, Dave, congratulations on your live event. We met one time. And nothing that I do in my life is going to relate to building relationships. I'm not going to say this is stupid, but I'm not going. Please stop inviting me." And I was like, okay. I stopped inviting her. I honored that request. Less than a year later, a notification popped up in social media, and she had changed roles. And what title do you think she became?
Building relationships.
A realtor. She became a realtor. And through no fault of her own, it's not a bad thing. My feelings weren't hurt. It's just, I know that things happen, whether they be things that we can control or things like the pandemic that we can't control. And a lot of times, there's 20 million people that are passing out different business cards than they were exactly 1 year and 1 month ago. So with that being said, think synergy, think long-term, be open to the opportunity that what I'm talking to you with this person may not even come full circle for 2 or 3 years. And in 2 or 3 years, that whole relationship can bloom and be just a professional garden of amazing opportunities for both of us. The fifth principle is specifically for me. I bake that in there to remind myself to have fun, because a lot of times I get really serious when I'm presenting. I have what I call resting Marine face. And while I might be having...
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt. I love when I saw that slide, resting Marine face, like, oh, come on.
Well, especially for somebody who profiles faces. Yeah, there's a lot of times where if you caught a weird picture of me, it looks like I'm super pissed, but I'm having a great time. But here's the example with that. I do carry gigantic boom boxes with me most places that I go, and I do it for fun. I do it to create unique experiences for people, and a lot of times it opens up an opportunity for people to say, hey, what's with the boombox? And that one little connection can turn into a conversation, can turn into a friendship, and can turn into that connection that could change everything. Who knows? But what I've learned is when I've walked down, Nashville, Las Vegas, Tulsa, Dallas, Kansas City with the big boombox on my shoulder, if I have that resting Marine face, people are getting out of the way, but they're getting out of the way for the wrong reasons, right? But if I smile, that little smile is that encouragement or something where people might say, well, this guy looks like a lot of fun. I think I'll approach him. So if you go to networking events and you grab some food and you just sit in the corner and you just look at everybody like you absolutely don't want to be there, present company excluded, you're going to close off the opportunity for you to meet and create new relationships. So the fifth principle is another one, just smile and have fun. Finally, the sixth principle is to shop local. When I talk about shopping local, here's one thing that I've learned, and it doesn't have to be in your local community. I'm very involved in the veteran community, so I love keeping it veteran. If there's ever people that I can work with in the veteran community that do websites, I'm going to recommend them. If there's people that do copywriting, I'm going to recommend them. There's people that do any kind of services, food. I'm always going to try and keep it veteran because that's the local for me. But where we saw this really change during COVID is so many people stood up for the local business owner. And here's what I've learned. Amazon is phenomenal, and they're probably going to get you the best deal. They're going to ship you exactly what you order. They're going to do it faster, and you're probably going to save a little bit of money, and you'll get it faster than you were anywhere else. However, they're not going to be there to hold your hand when you get fired. They're not going to be there to introduce you to the next opportunity when you go through some of your most challenging adversities. And the fun story with that is I was creating a poster for somebody that I was trying to create a relationship with, a very professional relationship. It was a big influencer. I knew his style of sort of comedy and fun. And I took a movie poster, and the movie, if you're in sales, it's called The Goods. And if you haven't seen The Goods with Jeremy Piven, then you should probably just watch that movie, or we can't be friends anymore. But if you
nothing extreme there, no?
Yeah, nothing extreme. But there's a movie poster, and I actually took his head off and I put this guy's head on it. And I put people from his team on the people behind him. So I changed this whole poster to look like it was this guy and his team. And I was really just trying to build a new relationship. And when I shopped around, I could have got the poster pretty cheap, like $30 or something like that. I think it was like $38 with shipping and everything. And I remember I was like, I'd love to keep this local if I can. So I looked through my network, and there was somebody that I had loosely met in Las Vegas. We had never really connected, but he owned a print shop, and it was a family business that was passed down to him. And I reached out and said, hey man, I'm doing this poster thing. I could order it from Amazon. I want to keep it local. I'm wondering if you could help me out. Guess what he did? He got me better quality paper. He got me a bigger poster, and he saved me $4 versus what I would have got it from Amazon. But here's the kicker. He's a B2B business, and he's connected to hundreds of businesses right here in the community. And that started to form a relationship to where now we're both local heroes trying to connect the dots for other people. Amazon's not going to do that for me, right? They're going to show me more stuff that I might like to buy, right? But they're not going to introduce me to any of the people who might want to do business with me. So that's the idea behind the principle of shopping local. So what we've got is 6 principles. And if you put these on a wheel, right, just like a sales cycle, and you set that right next to the sales cycle, you have one that just continues to unlock infinite opportunities. And it is a numbers game. On the number side of prospecting, it's for every 100 people, there's 10 people interested, 5 people that might want to buy, and 2 people that do. But on this cycle of on this cycle of networking and showing up and serving other people and sharing, guess what? For every 1 person you meet that you don't close that relationship, you open yourself up to at least 100 other opportunities through that person's network. And if you don't try to close them and you don't make people feel uncomfortable, just like you don't like to feel uncomfortable when people start to sell you, when you walk away and you go to talk to somebody else, they're going to be left with this overwhelming feeling to say, man, I really like that guy. And he has a podcast and he talks to veterans, and I know veterans. And now I want to introduce those people to him because he didn't make me feel like everybody else. So you have one wheel that just unlocks opportunity and one wheel that closes opportunities. And before everybody says, listen here, you tree hugging hippie, you can't just go around hugging people and let nothing happen. Don't get it twisted. I came from a sales and leadership background where I was a sales and leadership coach for a large firm with 300 coaches worldwide. And I can take almost any sales cycle apart, rewrite it, reinvent it, train it, hire for it, and scale it across the country. But there's a time and a place for that process. And trust me, if somebody reaches out to me and say, hey, Dave, I met you briefly at a networking event last week. I wanted to see if my antenna are up to build relationships, but there's a good chance that they need to be closed. And now they're in the sales cycle, right? Or they have a referral, which puts that person into the sales cycle. So there is a time and a place for sales. There is a time and a place for networking. And if you're going anywhere to exercise these ideas, then I highly suggest that you go tuned in to, am I here to build relationships or am I here to close business? And again, most of the time, if you're in a networking situation or something that's sold as a networking event, most people don't want to be sold. So keep that in mind and save the closing for the trade shows and for the phones. So now that you have this great knowledge, where can you use it, right? There's a few places where I believe you can start to build relationships. And one is keep doing what you're doing. Go attend events, be a member in a group, be an attendee, right? Buy a ticket, go to a thing. But what I've learned is that a way that you can take it to a whole nother level is you can actually start to host events, right? That's my favorite thing to do. I love hosting live events. I love hosting virtual events. I love bringing people together. The third is to attend what I call a growth experience. This can be a summit. This can be a retreat. It can be a mastermind, which is a very elusive term that a lot of people are using. And those are things where I believe you focus on a measured period of growth or area of growth for a measurable period of time. Could be 3 days, could be 3 months, could be the whole year. But if you attend one of these growth experiences and there is a transformation that is happening, a lot of times you're going to be in company that you could start to build really authentic relationships. I'm really grateful to say that I dropped my best friend off from the military. I haven't seen him in 7 years. And before that, it was 7 years. And we went into the military in 2000. That's how we met. And that was definitely a transformational experience. And I'm not suggesting that everybody go to the military, but most of those relationships will never be broken. So you can go to a growth experience, or just like hosting events, you can host them. And that's what I've learned to do over time. I love attending events. I love coaching people on how to host events. And now I create book clubs, masterminds, things of that nature.
By the way, your mastermind website is being uploaded in all the media because we have live in 7 different places. So what you see is a Day Business Mastermind. That is the mastermind program that they have. So that is the link that I've been posting all the time, so people know what is she's posting.
Yep. Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. So if you go to davemeansbusiness.com/mastermind, there's a couple of different levels and opportunities. And one great example of where I've really built strong relationships. One of the relationships that I've really invested in is one of my mentors, Lee Cockrell. He was the VP of operations for all of Disney for years. And after
And
he
I'm
retired,
so pissed off. I miss that event because when you send me the link, I have something else booked with a client, and I talk to the client like, please, I can meet at 3:00 in the morning. Can you change it? Like, no, like,
Yep.
shoot.
It's all right. It's all right. We've got another one coming up. So we'll be sure.
Yeah, I want to get on that one.
So a couple things that you can do. This is a fun idea. I take a few books with me everywhere I go. If now that live events are starting to open up, and now that we can go back to things like coffee shops, I leave books out on the table when I'm working on stuff or I'm meeting with people, and I leave them out with the intention of, I hope somebody sees that I'm reading books, and I hope somebody starts a conversation with me. And I kid you not, there's some books I don't have them here. They're on my shelf at work, but there's some books where I've had them out, and I could be talking to you in a really deep conversation like we're doing right now, and somebody will look over and say, oh my gosh, and they'll cuss, I effing love that book. And if somebody's going to interrupt me and cuss about one of the books that I'm reading, that's probably somebody that I want to start a relationship with. Right.
You know what? I use the opposite. I get books like the 100 worst serial killers on the world when I'm going on a plane. So nobody talk to me. And I put my headphones, my head cancellation headphones. Guess what? People tapping my shoulder and like, can I take a picture of the book? Like, what is wrong with people? The idea is you're not talking to me. So we use the inverse. When I'm going on a plane, I hate people talking to me because it's for work and I need to get in my zone and work in my computer. So I always have like a serial killer book. People love it. So we use the opposite. You use it to open conversation. I try to use it to close conversation. So next time, get a serial killer book, open a lot of conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. Well, it's funny because this conversation around books, it took me to a really interesting place, because if somebody's wearing a jersey, right? If somebody's wearing like a Las Vegas Raiders jersey, and somebody else, if you could be somewhere totally different, somebody else is a Raiders fan, they're going to say, go Raiders.
Yeah.
Right. And we might talk now, but if somebody's wearing the opposing team's jersey, then they might have everything in the world in common except for that one football team. And they might not ever talk because they're not seen as the enemy, but they're definitely not a friend. Well, here's what I learned. There's no jersey for the books and the authors that we read. So I just take books with me. And when I mentioned that to one of the other people that I've become friends with, it's somebody over at the team at Simon Sinek. And he said, man, that's a great idea. You should make that. You should make that t-shirt, and I'll show you real quick. This is what I came up with, and I've worn this t-shirt.
Find your way, find your why. That is a really good question. That is something that I ask a lot to my clients. Why you hire me? Why you want me here? Why it's the W questions are so important, and people forget how important they are to do the right questions.
Well, that book, that's a book title. That's one of Simon Sinek's books. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, when I wear that shirt around, people will walk out of their way to say, hey, is that the Simon Sinek book? And it's a great way for us to start and engage in a conversation. So, I always encourage for people to take a few books with them. And then I always suggest that people gamble. When I say gamble sometime, a lot of people get overwhelmed with, I don't want to have to go networking all the time. And I'm not saying that you should, but gamble one more hour a week than you normally would to show up to one thing. It's been remarkable with all the virtual events that have happened since last year that I've had the opportunity to connect with some of the most remarkable people on the planet. I was in a clubhouse room and we were just talking about Las Vegas, and I said some stuff that I got really passionate about, and I wasn't ranting. Everyone was kind of upset about some problems, and I came up with a few solutions. And the next day, the CMO of Allegiant Airlines was reaching out to me. And he was very unassuming. You would never know. On Clubhouse, he had 40 followers. And that was last month and yesterday, we had a big executive meeting with some of the most powerful people in Las Vegas to see what it would take to make Las Vegas the next entrepreneurial tech hub over the next 3 or 4 years. And it was just one meeting that I showed up in, right? I showed up, I served, and now there's really big things moving. So gamble a little bit of time, show up to one more thing. And if you're going to go, take a friend, right? Use these principles to show up and share and serve other people. And if you don't know where to start in building relationships, start with the relationships that you already have, right? Sometimes it's good to just reconnect with those people. I cycle my network every 2 to 3 months. And it's normally because I have a big event or something coming up. The big event that I have coming up next month is another virtual event with Lee Cockrell. But I've also been given the opportunity to actually curate a mastermind with Lee at the table. So we're going to be doing a 3-month, 90-day mastermind with the former VP of operations for all of Disney. So we've already got some remarkable people sitting at that table. So if you don't know where to start with the A's. Open up your phone, start with the A's, and go through and start building on the relationships that might already be there. And remember, it's not my goal to say that this is the only way. I'm not saying I'm going to change the world. I just hope that I spark the mind of the person who does. So I hope you take something from today and you're able to apply it and go into your next networking event a little bit more confident. And if you want to learn more, you're more than welcome to check out the podcast. Find me
Leave that slide when we're doing the questions so people can connect. And I'm sorry, but don't take the slide out. So keep telling where people can find you.
Absolutely. Yeah. You guys can find me here. And the only thing I haven't updated, I thought I did, but I'm also on Clubhouse for anybody that's on Clubhouse. And I'm making a dent in the universe over there. So I know I went a little bit longer because I get excited and carried away with talking about all this stuff. But
welcome to the club. So what the fifth principle you're talking about, and it's more like to understanding why it works so well. When we smile, it's like a handshake is equal to 3 hours of human interaction. And what happened when you do that, or somebody hug you after a bad day, or you hug your dog, your kids, like everything that comfort you, get oxytocin out and level up. So oxytocin is the bonding hormone. So the only time that happens besides shaking hands that is not happening is when you smile. And if you want to win a situation, when you start with a smile, the other person is going to smile, but both people are going to elevate oxytocin. For me, it's really difficult to smile because for many years I have crooked tooth. When I start doing face reading, I find out that is the best thing that can happen to me, so I don't fix it anymore. But if you smile, how you smile, another thing to add, if you watch 2 minutes of funny videos, you're going to be smiling naturally. So when you're drained and you don't want to do that event, and like you says, like, oh my God, like gamble, one more event, let's do that. The best way to smile is doing that. And before you realize, like, you're all 35 minutes on the event. I never was a networking until I was introduced to this amazing networking where everybody knows that we are here to do business. So everybody knows that your business is here. So you need to describe your business. You need to put it. And actually, I'm doing introductions to you too. It's amazing because everybody, when they have like these breakup rooms, it says, how can I help you? Who I can introduce you? So we take that mask away that we are here for business. We know that the reason the membership is cost what it costs, but it was amazing. I'm booked Monday to Friday, sometimes 2 times a day, 7 o'clock in the morning, never been a morning person, but I have the best and the strongest relationship. And it's funny, this Friday, I'm going to have a meeting with a person that I've been building a relationship for 6 months, and then I never met in person. And it's going to like, oh my God, it's the first date. It's going to be weird. And now I can smell you, but we are coming back. Actually, I have a couple of places who already sent me like, when you're going to feel more comfortable to go back to in-person event, July, August, or September. And actually, I'm booked for a golf tournament in September. So the life that we had before is coming back, and people is desperate to go out. So networking and the boom of the economy is going to happen because people is like on the waiting list, like, they are already on the door waiting to go out. So if we can re-practice this like precambric way that we step back, because we had been talking and interacting in the monitor. Now we need to interact again as human beings. So if you can use any tools, anything to like how we coming back, not to come back to aggressive. I have friends who are like made for a coffee 6 feet away, like, dude, you need to stop drinking coffee. Like you are too high. Like, I'm so excited to see people. Like you need to slow down. He's registered for every event in the next 2 years. Is desperate to go to see people. So, but coming back to the sixth step, the 5 has an hormonal and behavioral reason why when you smile, people smile back to you. So great topics that we can learn and how to better networking. And we have comments. When it says what questions to do, people says favorite places to travel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it does open up a lot more than just what do you do? So yeah, and here's the best part. So if anybody has their favorite questions that they love to ask, share them in the chat. The great thing is we can steal those questions, right? It's always better to have more. I love taking other people's questions and sharing them with other people. Same thing when people ask, what are you reading? A lot of times when people talk about what they're reading, it creates connection right there. So favorite podcast, any of that stuff. We're all growing as individuals. We're all working on personal and professional development. And the more that we can share what we're learning, the more we would create opportunities to connect with other people. But yeah, favorite places to travel. I felt completely left out in a conversation last night with my girlfriend and my best friend being here. He's been to 50 countries. I've been to 3, right? So, well, I guess 4, but yeah, I felt completely left out, and I feel like there's a whole world of, more people that I could be exposed to. So yeah, I think all those are great questions.
I traveled to 120, and I know the airport to the hotel to the convention center or the training center, back to the hotel to the airport. And you can see then I have like a pile of passport. When I got divorced, I have 4 million miles only to realize how much I travel. And like, okay, I was in Budapest. I don't remember anything because I only think I can tell you how was the bathroom on the airport and how nice was the people on the hotel, but I don't remember anything else. So Dr. Michael Timon says, great thoughts. Like, yeah, it's great. It's always something new to learn. And when you was talking about networking and the approach and the questions to do, one of the things that I tend to do lately is to put something that I call laxative pills on my conversations to know really fast if that person, it's a relationship, it's a connection, or it's only a LinkedIn like connect. That's it. What do you think about that? I know, and we had met through Brandon Strassa, and I met Brandon when somebody introduced me to him to do a podcast. And when he did the podcast with you and says, oh my God, you and Susan need to meet. And I ended up meeting your girlfriend too, that I introduced. So it's the will that you're talking about is real. Mm-hmm. That's how it's happening.
Yeah. Well, and even for Brandon, I think I've introduced like 10 different people to him. And that's all I did. I haven't asked him for anything. I've just kept introducing him to people. So the cycle continues. And here's one last idea, or maybe not the last idea, but here's one thing that as we were approaching 2021, a lot of people were exhausted with 2020. And some people just waited for the date on the calendar to change things back to normal, like the snap in Avengers or something. And what's funny about that is that I didn't. In fact, I embraced this whole virtual thing. And I said, what if there are no live events for all of 2021? And I did it with the attitude that it would make me be very intentional about all the relationships that I build online. And now there's a way through things like Clubhouse and social media and all these virtual events that I can create new connections all across the country, all around the world. And now, because I live in a global city, that as things do start to open back up, people, like you said, your friend, some people are just ready to go anywhere. Well, I promise you, it's going to be a lot easier to come to Las Vegas than most places. So if you want to come to Las Vegas, and go skydiving or go race some Ferraris or jump out of, eat some great food, I'll pick you up at the airport.
Well, I've been doing events and I'm talking in places that I wouldn't go before, because like I've been doing like keynote speaking or training in Germany in the morning and in California at evening, and doing network events in the middle. And sometimes I'm like, what, I'm so tired. Like, and I check my calendar, like, no, now I got it. I've been all over the place. And actually, we went online completely as a company 4 years ago. So when this happened, we were ready. So we spent a lot of time training in other companies doing it. But for me, the pandemic has been a really good chance to network and learning how to do it and do it better. But one of the things that I learned is it needs to be the right place. Mm-hmm. I cannot be jumping in any networking if it's not the right place. We need to be clear what are the rules. And that's one of the things that I learned about myself. And one of the positive things about networking during the pandemic. If it's not the right place, I need to pick it up really fast and learn that it's not the place for me. Jackie says, I have only been in one country. 3 countries sounds like a lot to me.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, no. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So it not every situation do you have to be resonate with people 100%. But yeah, so the important thing is, what questions can you find that will help you find your tribe? And that's one thing, going back to those 3 questions, those have become an anchor for me and my brand and everything that I do. And it's just a little bit different way to explain it that will help people gravitate to you. Because a lot of times, and when I say what pisses you off, I don't mean traffic, right? Everybody, that's annoying, but like, what are the things that really frustrate us? And a lot of times when you communicate that, there's some people that are also frustrated by the same things. So there's connection, right? But for some people, if maybe that doesn't resonate with them, it's what breaks my heart that does, right? And what breaks my heart is, people. And then a lot of times people are like, yeah, me too. Or it's that third thing, the problem I'm trying to solve. And if you're trying to solve something close to that, then that's where we can collaborate. So that's always a great exercise for people to say is, what pisses you off? What breaks your heart? What problem are you trying to solve? It's a little bit different way to explain it than, because a lot of times when people say, what do you do? They'll talk around their customers and say, well, I help these people that are frustrated with this, that are sick and tired of this, that are, losing sleep over this. And here's the product or solution that's what I do. And it's like, well, what do you care about? That's what I want to know is what are the things that you care about?
Well, when people says, what you do for dinner tonight, probably a soup, and they get pissed off. And like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, what I do. You didn't ask me in what sector. So tonight I'm going to be having a soup, and they get pissed off. Like, dude, I will not going to be answered. That question is so boring. Like, now I'm going to ask you a question. What is the question that you always want to reply and nobody have done it to you in a networking? Yeah. And that's when you start breaking the news and people start having fun and they start thinking. Yeah. And they start sharing. And when you share, you captivate information so you know how much you can have in common with that person. And when you was talking about building relationships, I was doing a Zoom this morning recording. And when the person asked me like how to present to be an entrepreneur, we have 3 companies. So like we are like multiple serial killer entrepreneurs. And says, one of the things is I have more referral to new customers for people that I've been pitching my business who doesn't need my service than anything else. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, for example, I have a referral and I talk to you, Dave, like, Dave, this is what we do. Like, you know what? We don't need your service, but I have a couple of friends who maybe use your service. So I avoid all the painful, like building relationship. I'm going directly because I get connected from someone who already they trust. So never put any business card on the trash because you never know what can happen. The biggest client that I have from a person that I almost punched at an event. And it says, we have two options. I can punch you in the face, or you can buy me a glass of wine and we can try to settle this. Well, guess what? After we settle things, I'm like, I hate networking. I don't know how to do that. And I didn't see a ring, so I kind of hit on you. I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know you was taking so we patched things through, and he felt guilty and ended up introducing me with one of my biggest clients. So you never know is how you get yourself out there and try to do the best. If I need to be here for 45 minutes on an event or 2 hours, do the best you can when you're there. Oh, don't go at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a million stories where you just never know. You really never know who someone is, and you never know who they're connected to. You know, I can be really honest. I almost passed out yesterday when I facilitated that meeting with all the people from Las Vegas, because it all happened from a room that I was in. And in Clubhouse, you can't even see people's faces, and you just hear voices. And I was just talking. That's all I did. And somehow people found me and wanted to connect. And now, we're literally bringing a lot of action to some of the biggest opportunities for Las Vegas and the Raiders and all that stuff. And it's just, you never know. You never know who people are, who they're connected to. So I always tell people, it's like the golden rule: treat people how you want to be treated. Knowing that most people don't want to be sold, there's a time and a place for it. So let's ask better questions. Let's tell better stories, and let's just unlock more opportunities. I think that's the thing that I always try to do. And when it comes to questions, I forgot about this. You mentioned something earlier, like cooking dinner or something. For a year, I think one of the first questions that I would ask people in any kind of group situation, kind of a icebreaker, I guess. When was the last time that you were in a fist fight, and did you win? And you'd be surprised. You'd see the business, the most dressed up business women even. And they would just they'd been waiting to tell the story their whole life. And okay, it was about 7 years ago. And it's 7 years ago, you're an adult. And it's yeah, I know. I was on a business trip and here's what happened. And it's this amazing story that you would never get to tell. But then the fun question is, did you win? And then that's where you open up a whole different kind of human interaction with people, because there's a lot to happen for somebody to actually get in, for people in a first world country to get into a fist fight with another human. There's a lot that has to happen, and there's a lot of story there. But yeah, just fun stuff like that was always a lot of fun.
We have people from London, so they're really late in London. So I want to read Perry. The move to virtual over the pandemic has given me the opportunity to connect with amazing people globally that I never would have come across. I'm incredibly grateful. Yeah. And here I have another one. I love asking, what is the biggest risk you have taken in life? So now we have work. Now you can start taking notes and Perry work and fundraising and sales. So these kind of webinar for him are amazing because he can still questions to be asking people. But it's true, the pandemic. If depending who you talk to, I have people who says I grow more during the pandemic because I need to pivot and finally need to get out of my comfort zone, and people who is devastated, and people who have the biggest promotion at work they never had.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, what Perry said, that's amazing, because I remember, it's funny. We just hit a year, it was a year ago last week that all this happened.
In my case, it's a year and 3 weeks. Then I self-secluded myself in the middle of the forest, and I haven't seen anyone.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I remember that very first weekend. It was a Saturday, And already somebody had the first big virtual event. Of course, we had no idea how long this was going to go on, but it was the first big virtual event, Conquer the Chaos, all these great speakers. And it was a Saturday morning. Obviously, I'm not going anywhere, right? My girlfriend, she was working a different shift at the time. She left at 6 a.m. I had nothing to do. So I'm watching this virtual event. I'm taking notes and I'm listening to all the speakers. As they speak, I connect with them on LinkedIn. And there's one guy who said he was a veteran, and my ears always perk up. And I'm like, okay, listen to some of his story, not even all of it. And I was like, man, I'd really love to connect with this guy. Reached out to him and said, hey, I loved hearing you speak. I love talking with other veterans that are creative and innovative, and I'd love to connect. He called me, right? He just called me and we had a great conversation. It's a guy named Ron Klein. Ron Klein is the guy who created the use for the magnetic strip on the back of credit cards. He also
Are you kidding?
What's that?
Are you kidding? Really? Wow.
Yeah. And he also, he's the guy who automated the New York Stock Exchange, and he created the MLS or NMLS for real estate. So it's like, and we just had a great conversation. We've still never really found anything that I can introduce him to or like is the right fit, but we've continued to build that relationship, right? So it's just like, I never would have talked to that guy otherwise. So to Perry's point, yeah, there's so many people. And even now with things like Clubhouse, I could stay up all night and I could be talking with thousands of people from the UK and start opening up a whole opportunity of business.
I haven't go to Clubhouse because I don't have an Apple phone. I have a iPad, so I know I can go to my iPad, but I do know that I'm gonna get addicted and I'm not gonna stop. So one of the reasons that we are not in Clubhouse, so stop asking, because I have emails all the time like, are you in Clubhouse? Like, no, because we have enough channels to communicate, and I know what is going to happen with Clubhouse. And I thank you very much for everybody who have invited me, but I can't. Yeah. It's going to be like never ended.
Same thing for me. I have an Android, but so many people told me, and then somebody gave me a phone and said, use this, get on it. And I haven't looked back. And again, it's not for everybody. It will suck time out of your day. And even like that, we were joking about this yesterday, because yesterday's meeting started from a room on Clubhouse. It was on February 11th, and here we are like 40 days later, and it seems like 2 months ago, just because there's like this weird time warp in Clubhouse land. So but still a great opportunity, right? That's just one example of somebody that I've reconnected with. Just so many amazing conversations, and it's been really interesting to just continue to I practice these principles all the time, just so I can say, there's no gimmick here. Is there an offer? Sure. I'll teach people how to build more authentic relationships. I'll show people how to do how to launch their own virtual events and things like that. And yeah, we do have some pretty cool tables that we're curating to get the right people at the table for some masterminds. But these are things that I actively practice, right? And a lot of people have started to apply these same principles. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I've been resharing your mastermind program. And Dave, I cannot believe that I hold it for more than an hour. We were supposed to be, like always says, 45 minutes. My 45 minutes meaning an hour, 20 minutes. Dave, thank you very much for all the presentation, all the slides, and all your time. It's funny. One of the things that I have on Saturdays is emails like, oh, I just got my coffee and watch your live from the week. Apparently, I'm the Saturday coffee morning for some people. So let's see what other questions are coming. Thank you very much for people like, for example, Perry, who is all the way from London, and that he collaborate and he take advantage of every of the live that we do. Elba and all the people who collaborate and make questions, because that make it more interesting. I have so many questions, but we have a certain amount of time. Thank you to Dr. Michael Timan, Jackie Law, and most of all, Dave, to you. And let's keep building relationships and learning about networking. Perry, thank you. I'm inspired after this amazing session. I would say go to a Dave Mastermind and you're going to be blown away again. Like talking to the dude who made this name. That is a good one. So, Dave, what you says about sharing job posting and events the other people does, I do that all the time. The first thing that I do when I wake up in the morning, I put my glasses on my phone and like, okay, sharing posts and like, so let us know when you have the next live event so we can share it with the audience and they can enjoy all the craft and knowledge that you two have to share with.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Bye, boss. Thank you.